But I just want to say hello to Randall, who's lurking in the wings. He can join us now if he can hear me. There he comes. He's coming to join us. So hello, Randall.
Hi, Juliet, Alison, and Michelle.
Thank you for flying the flag for the blokes.
Well,
I
somebody's got
was,
to.
yeah, I was hoping to get some other blokes on here, but some of the, I know there's a conference in Glasgow that some are attending and so on. So Randall is also a veteran home educator. Well, he's now a grandfather and but long on the scene, watching the been a bit of a watchdog, keeping an eye out on what's going on and letting people know, flagging it up for people's attention, which has been really helpful. And Randall follows the path of these political activities, the bills and that kind of thing, quite a lot, and brings a lot of wisdom and advice around these things. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, Randall, but also in the Facebook chat, there's a couple of questions come up. So I'm going to pose them to you now,
Right.
and so that they can possibly be addressed through the course of this next half hour. So somebody said, naturally very concerned about the bill. Can you see any way around it if they do bring it in? Any early moves we should be making to reject it, in particular the forced digital ID? And then I'm just want to see if there's any others there. Okay, so yeah, so the same person has said, okay, we're hearing what the bill is shocking. How legally we resist it? And I might actually let Michelle engage with this new, because Michelle has been so very, very involved with actions against the bill as well. So I might just hand over the conversation to you if you want to just have give yourself a bit of an introduction, Randall, and whatever you feel you need to share, and then perhaps Michelle, the two of you can just have some dialogue on that. I might nip out for a quick comfort break myself, so I'm going to hand over to you guys.
Okay, Juliet, thank you very much. Just before you go, though, for your comfort break, I don't think you know what my name means, so I'll introduce that because you used the phrase, I'm a bit of a watchdog. Well, the root of the name Randall is actually watch wolf.
Oh,
That's what
we
it
like
means.
that. So our alliance emblem is literally you,
No,
like a jackal.
that's a jackal. I am not a jackal. Let me tell you that, right? I could see a couple of laughing hyenas on this call, but I am. I admit it. It is something in my nature that makes me something of a watchdog. I'm happy with watchdog or watchwolf, but that's it. Our home education journey goes back like sorry I didn't listen to more of today, but we had some unexpected visitors call in for lunch. So I caught your last two guests, Cathy and I forget the other lady's name.
Fiona, was it Fiona?
No,
No,
before
Alice.
Alice, that's right. Yeah, I didn't catch Fiona. I'm sorry. I'll try and catch up. Um, but they were going back, to the Badman days and just afterwards, and that's where really I became political. We were home educating before that, mainly our younger children, but actually you you home educate your children even if they go to school. That is the fact. Parents educate their children by their lifestyle, by their attitudes and things. But we formally home educated our kids, our younger children, back in the 90s and um, into up to 2009 when Ed Balls introduced the Badman Review and his first bill that tried to bring in registers. Boy, they were not as bad as they are in the current bill back then, but that was the situation. We fought it. Um, the hand of providence, in a way, came in because what happened? Gordon Brown called an election and Labour lost the election, and in the run up to it, they'd had to sacrifice the registers bit. Many of us knew it was coming back. Not everybody liked the idea, but it did come back with Lord Soley, and that's when I moved up a couple of gears and got even more involved than I had been. So that's me. We're obviously with this white hair. I'm not home educating dad anymore. Some of our grandchildren are home educated, so we still have some links. But I'm here. I really do. I'm thankful for people like Joy Baker, who dug her heels in and said no, and did a lot of fight. And it was interesting to pick up earlier, because it's one of the points I think we do really need to take to heart today, is that Joy fought in a day when the only means of communication was either through printed newsletters or telephone calls and occasional gets-togethers. And there was hardly, I don't know the figures, but some of you may be in home educating local groups that have got 50 or 60 families in them. Back in those days, there was a lot less than that. And even when we started, there wasn't. There may have been 200 or 300 home educating families in the country, but it wasn't the size it is now.
Randall, I don't actually think she ever met another home educating family.
I would be surprised if
I don't think there were any.
I don't know if there were others or not, but it was very spread out and meeting that I would imagine she never met them. So, that was it. The one thing I want to say, I don't know if anybody's discussed it so far about the bill. I am encouraged that it seems to have gone on hold. I don't know why it's gone on hold. I cannot explain why. It would only be speculation. One thing we do know from a written answer that Lord Way got this week is they are still talking to the Information Commissioner's Office about data protection issues. And that we know that conversation had started in May. So for a government department to be talking to a arm's length body that long suggests they've got a puzzle they don't know how quite to solve. And if that is the case, not just on the home education, they're not home education, they're children not in school registers, aren't they? Sleight of hands there, folks. Don't believe them. It is home educated kids. They're not really bothered about the children who aren't in school, who they know.
Oh, hang on a minute. They want all the flexi schoolers on there for definite.
Oh, okay, flexi schoolers, but they know about them. But
I know, but they're saying that this is a way of them capturing the numbers of flexi schoolers, and I'm like, give them a registration mark.
No. What it really is, Alison, it's about catching who else is teaching them.
Yeah,
because let's be honest.
Yeah, because that's the arms and legs of the register, isn't it? The register is not a list of children. It is not simply a list of children and where they live. It has the whole point about this list is that it's not a list, and it has arms and legs attached to it, and it brings in this digital ID stuff. And I just want to say this, Randall, because it's come up today. Simon Squibb's interview with ITV came out this morning.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, and you'll notice there was a bit of a voiceover at one point. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
About this isn't a digital ID. It's just a unique identifying number that will be linked to databases. Could you just explain to us why it's not a digital ID through the back door or the thin end of a wedge of a digital ID, permanent digital ID through the back door? Because I think it is.
Well, I think that voiceover, as you said, it's a very unusual thing to happen. So I presume somebody in government, somewhere in the state, had to vet the video before it went out. Or some lawyers said, oh, we can't let this go out like this. So rather than what was ever said, it's been voiced over. And I can't prove that, but it sticks out like a sore thumb.
It does.
So,
It's shenanigans. It's more shenanigans, isn't it? And they
but
also, the other thing that they did, we're going to have to think of a word for this, Michelle. Whatever the BBC did to the Donald Trump stuff, you know, where they spliced and diced it and glued two bits together, they did the same thing to Michelle in to educational freedom in the article. They sliced and diced, shoved a bit in the middle, took it out of context, and put it in as a quote.
yeah, that happens all the time in journalism.
At the moment, didn't used to.
No. Oh, look, I'm not going there. That's
Not
right.
to this degree.
But let's go back to where we were on this
Yeah.
on this register not being a list like they have in the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
In the Isle of Man, they have to notify. It is not a register; it's a notification scheme. And they also, and it is true of all children not in state schools, because children in independent education, but it means the state, the government there, cannot take action and do anything other than say, are you still educating outside of the state school system? And that's all they've got. But it has been known now that, I forget the exact date, round about 2019, we had a change of department which looked after home education, and we now have in the home education department it being run by somebody with a prevent background. And the only explanation for that list of details people have got to give, and the fact that then they've got to give the name and address of other people, and this is where it connects with with flexi schoolers, Alison, is that Prevent are wanting to, the Prevent mentality says we must check up who is teaching these people. And that's why flexi school children need to be on it, so that the state knows who they're going to for other lessons during the time they're not in school. And if you want the confirmation of that in a way, in the committee, the Commons Committee, not the Lords Committee, on the bill, one amendment talked about reducing the amount of data collected, and I think it would have been not at weekends or during holidays. And then Minister Stephen Morgan said we must be able to build up a complete picture of these children, and that tells you that the state wants to know the colour of your children's underwear as much as anything else.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. But I don't know how many of you picked up, I've never heard of a publication called Hyphen, but a few days ago, I'll put the link in, I'll have to send it to you later, they ran a headline, babies and toddlers referred to counter-terrorism scheme Prevent hundreds of times. This is getting ridiculous. You know, this is getting ridiculous, all in the name of protecting the country. If all they can do, well, is it any wonder if they're bothering with babies and toddlers, if they're bothering with home educated children en masse, that they keep missing the real cases? They keep saying, oh, this person's not of any bother. It's much easier to look at babies and toddlers and home educators. But that isn't the thing behind it. That is a secondary issue behind this bill. I think I did hear Cathy talking about the fact that the real thing behind this bill is getting every child into school. And that is, it's amazing, isn't it? Schools are failing children so badly. We've had so many things in the news. Headmaster from North Wales, I think it was, the report about a week ago said that there was 50 missed opportunities. 50 missed opportunities to stop this man abusing children in his school. And they didn't do it. And the documentation for the bill says a child in school is presumed to be safe. There's an item on the radio this morning, a campaign, the mother of Harvey Wildgoose, who was murdered in Sheffield at school. She's regretting. He said, "I don't want to go, Mum. I don't want to go," and because of the knives, and he got stabbed in school, and now she's campaigning for knife archers, airport type security to go into school, and schools are putting them in as safeguarding measures. There's something broken in society, and what we should be bothered about is what's broken in society that brings children up in a thing where they think it's all right. I mean, kids will always fight, they'll always get nasty to each other, but the amount of all this happening, and we're looking at the wrong thing. We're trying to. It's easier to look at home educated children than it is to look at what's the causes of what's going on. We're doing something. Bridget Phillipson's statement.
Oh.
After the serious case review.
Yeah, it was awful. It was absolutely awful.
It was total blame shifting.
Yep.
Complete blame shifting. Yes, she headlined home education, what we're doing in the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill. This will sort it all. No, it won't. But you can't.
Best bit is the report itself states it will not. So in that report, it explicitly has a line stating that the register would not have saved Sarah. It has that in that. The report's bad, but it has that line in there.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that we kind of address some of the questions and so on while we have you on, Randall. So it's more about like, what can we do? So can you see any way around it if they bring the bill in? Are there any early moves we could be making to reject it? And also just the concerns about the forced consistent identifying number.
Well, I think two things. I did talk earlier about the fact that it's got this delay and pondered whether it's about the data protection, because that conversation has been going on for 6 months. I think, we can do. I think now we ought to be thankful that somebody has asked a question of the DFE. I would like to think it's possibly some of the legal opinions that have already been made public. Some haven't, maybe one of them as well, that have asked questions of the DFE that are getting them there. But even if they press ahead, because they're trying to find a way round those questions, if they press ahead, it's going to take parents to stand up and to protect their children's data and refuse to give it. I've been talking now for over 2 years when I've done in-person talks that it's time for home educating parents to strengthen their backbone. In the end, the only thing that does it is when mums and dads together, where they are together, stand up to the state and say, we are not going to comply. That is the only thing you can do.
And it has to be en masse. If there's only a few people, it doesn't work. It's got to be a real mass movement, doesn't it?
Well, let's put it this way. Anybody who thinks I'll leave it to somebody else won't be able to complain if there's not enough people doing it.
Yeah.
To make a difference.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 100%, but for instance, if there's two ways of handling the requirement. One is you ignore it altogether, and other people could just put far too much information into the thing, make it difficult for them to think.
Yeah.
But really, I think most people with children will have to count the cost of not doing anything. And this isn't just about home educators. I think this was mentioned earlier. What is happening is about parent and parenthood. And there is now a low trust of parents. It's actually a high level of distrust of parents in this country. And so people have to You know, the state thinks it's got to check everything a parent does. And if the child has problems, the parents are the first cause of suspicion in that life. You see it, you know, this thing that you can't, if your child's on a child protect, going through an inquiry stage that's in the bill, there's no nuance in there where it says if it's because of the parents, right? It's just if they're going through it. What if the parents have decided to homeschool because home educate, sorry, too many people use that phrase these days, home educate, because their child are being bullied or being threatened with a knife at school, and they say, I don't want to put them in that. I mean, one time in the States, the biggest driver of homeschooling, I can use it there, was religious conviction. I spoke to somebody about 5 years ago, and they told me it is now gun crime in American schools is the biggest driver of homeschooling there. Wow. If that, you know, this rising crime in schools and things is going to contribute to the numbers even more. I also think, by the way, we need more than one phrase to describe children educated out of school. That's just an aside. Yeah. Many parents are going into online tutoring, and they're going to be on this register, but it's not genuine home education as Joe Baker would recognise it. Let's bring her back in, since it's Joe Baker.
I think that's actually a good point you raised, Randall, and I think if you don't mind us spending a bit of time on it, just to what is home education? What is proper? What would we consider to be true home education?
I'm into a new phrase that I keep trying to market. I will take every opportunity I can to market it, and it's family-based education. Right? The family, not home. Home to a bureaucrat is a building. A family is a set of relationships. It's based in the family. It isn't confined to the family. How many times have we heard the DFE and others say, well, we need to see your home as that's the premises you're doing the teaching in, right? You know what they did with playgroups and things? They made them fit these hinge protectors so children can't get their fingers trapped indoors anywhere that's used as a playgroup. Well, they've got that mentality. We've got to come and see your home and do it. We're not talking about home. Most of home education doesn't happen at home. A good proportion does, but an awful lot happens in many other places.
Yeah.
So it's based in the family, and sorry, not education, but learning, family-based learning, because education to, again, the DFE is what you are taught, where learning is what you actually take into you and absorb. What we were talking about earlier, while I was listening to Cathy, that you know, children get motivated. Simon, on that video that ITV are doing, have said
Simon Squibb, yes,
right, Simon Squibb. He said the same thing. You know, children learn when they're motivated to learn, and this is one of the problem with the system. Before the mass school movement, all children were educated at home, right, by their parents, in whatever it was, right? The rich people, when the boys got to 7, sent them off to one of the schools, but by then they'd already had character development and things. So what I think we need to do is distinguish between types of out of school education, learning,
the different categories, really.
And I don't consider online tutoring to be home education.
No, it's like it's a bit like the Australian bush schools. They used to have over the radio. The kids used to have to access it over the radio because they lived too remotely. And I think that's a fair point. But one thing that schools, although they say it's about learning, that's only one thing they're after with the school system. A lot of it is about shaping a certain kind of citizen that behaves a certain way and is compliant. Michelle, have you got any thoughts on what Randall said? While you find the unmute button.
No, well, I do think we need to start having a wider remit in what we're saying. I also think, if Labour want to do one of their statistics bits, they could overnight turn around and say that the ones where it is literally your child is online from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. in lessons, they've already done you can register to be an approved online provider. Then just go one further and make those ones official online schools. Because then people who want to use that, they don't have to then come under the home ed remit, because they can then be under an online school remit.
So they would be effectively privately educated, just like as if they were going to an independent school, but it would be an online one instead.
Yeah. Because they can do the attendance, tick, so they can tick what the DfE wants. Because there's a high proportion that choose that when they don't necessarily want to home educate, but the schools don't work for them. Either they're not good enough in their area, or a lot of people who've been forced out through the VAT. Well, some of them have had LA suggest to them, but it's all right. Here's a list of online schools you can use, and it's cheaper than what the fees would be. So because there are no state places in those areas. So I think that would sort of like be a win, because it looks like you've reduced the numbers massively, but it also would take some of the pressure off the home ed community as such, because then you haven't got people talking about different things when they're talking about home education. Because if you genuinely just want a full-time 9 to 3 online lessons for your child, you're not going to be wanting the groups or the co-ops or things like that, because your child won't have time to do them anyway. And I think we do maybe need to start using better language. And I do think family-based learning is a good way to go, because that's very, very clear where it starts from. But I think a good way would literally, to the people who are full-time online, that just make that is a different category of person, really.
Yeah, well, at least the education system could tick the box like, okay, they're in a school, they're not home educated.
Yeah, you must get them outside of the remit of the local authorities' home education department then, because they're all moaning that they've got too many, that they've got 2.5 full-time equivalent staff to cover 2,500 home educating children. Then, well, that'd knock 500 of them off.
Well, it is. I think sorry, Randall, I'm cutting you off.
I think where we're going here is really what we need to do, and I want to talk before
please do.
sometime about difference. But here we're talking about what is the different forms of being educated outside of state system. Now, this is where we get overlap with the private schools, because technically home education is considered as private education. That's why you have to enter as a private candidate into exams. You're not, it's the opposite of state education. So at the moment they split the category slightly different. They say registered and therefore supervised schools and unregistered education. Well, I think most providers of online tuition wouldn't mind Ofsted inspecting them, to be honest. And however they do it, we have got to be clear that this term, which was invented by home educators, elective home education. Apparently, I didn't learn this, but the late Neil
Taylor,
yeah, he told me not that long ago, not long before he died, that the term had been invented by a home educated mum whose husband was a surgeon, and he kept talking about elective operations, elective surgery, and she turned around to the DfE and said, we do elective home education, and that's how the phrase came into being. And that is what it is. It's not forced home education, it's elective. It is parents electing to teach their children, to provide their children with learning opportunities within a base that starts in the family. And, you know, it's time for another phrase, but it's time to also say people who aren't electing, people who are running from the bad things of the education system, you know, and I welcome them in many ways into the home educating communities, but they need to remember that at the heart of it are people who want to do this, not people who want the government to get itself sorted out and start doing what it's promised. You know, I personally would never trust any government to deliver what they promise. Right, full stop. It's a political statement. I do not trust them to deliver. Right, and therefore, if you put your hope in them, you'll be let down. Whether that's whatever that is about. Okay, they come good sometimes, but over time they will let down. So we're not here to protest the lack of provision, what's been promised, and some of it is iniquitous. The SEND system and trying to get around to their problem by cutting it back is a totally iniquitous approach. But we're not here to do that. We're here to say the family relationship is paramount. And the bonding of parents and children throughout childhood is important.
It's sacred, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And, you know, and that is what we've got to protect. And if, as Cathy said, if any parent loses the right to home educate other than through abusing their children, neglecting their children, but if it's a blanket ban on a type of people, whether that's a religious group, an ethnic group, or whatever, all parents will lose it.
Exactly.
You know, and we're here to protect that space. And we're here to protect it for people who don't value it today. Because if the government goes in a way that some parents don't want, are uncomfortable with, I want them to be able to say, we will decline your offer of free schools and not be penalised for it. But this is the way we're going. Parents are being penalised for declining a free offer. And, you know, it's the enforced schooling mentality that is there. But can I just say on this as well, I don't know what, as I say, I couldn't listen in earlier because we had visitors, and I hope they get home safely. They'll probably listen to this. But basically, I don't know what you said about Joy. In many ways, our fight is very similar to what Joy was fighting. But in other ways, it's really, really different. And it's mainly different because safeguarding was a word that hadn't been invented in Joy's day. And
they still held the same attitude. They just didn't call it that.
Well, I think we've got to take the nuance of why safeguarding is becoming an issue, because it's not education.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the argument is actually the Lawyer Monthly, which is a publication I've never come across before, did 2 articles this week on homeschooling in both their cases, but home education. And the first one, and the one which I would recommend to read, and I'll put it in the chat along with the other one, which is about Sarah Sharif, has got the title of How Homeschooling Exposed a Hidden Weakness in the UK's Safeguarding System. And it's quite an interesting read. Obviously, the author doesn't know anything about home education, but they do know what the general message is. Links are in the chat now. But towards the end, what they do, what I think it's George, I think it is a he, but George is a female name as well. They come up with some suggestions. And here's the first one they do. A mandatory national register of home educated children, not to judge the quality of teaching, but to ensure children are known to the local authorities. Okay. Now that seems reasonable, right? If what they're saying is true, but the bill and the guidance from 2019, which is still in force, says it is about judging the teaching, and not just the quality, but the value of the teaching. And we have now got not physical safeguarding embedded in this bill and in the guidance is not even emotional safeguarding. It is values safeguarding. It is safeguarding against the values that children are being taught. And this is where it comes back to prevent. They want to stop parents teaching them values which are not approved by the state. And that can be many things. People disagree with things. People disagree about values. Now, that's fine. You know, I might want to say, well, if you teach your children that, I don't think it will be a help. But I'm not going to want people teaching something I think is unhelpful to disqualify them from teaching. And so I'd encourage people to just read that through and see it. The other one's about Sarah Sharif. That's the usual line of we got to slam down on home education by the same author. But where we've moved from Joyce Baker's day is the use of safeguarding, not just for physical well-being, but for the values children are taught in school. They want what's the values that have been taught in school to be taught to all children. And this is why some of the faith groups are particularly in their crosshairs, because they know faith groups do not teach the same values as a secular state. And that is what's going on. And this is a different fight. The shift in 2019 with the guidance to safeguarding, saying that there is no safeguarding concern, but we've got to make sure the children are safeguarded, and we've got to know what's being taught, and that what they're being taught is in accordance with British values. It says that, folks. It's values. It's British values. And if you value freedom for yourself, you have to protect freedom for others. So going back to the question, Juliet, I would say quite clearly that if this bill goes through, and don't forget the Labour government has got to survive long enough now for it to get through, and that is looking very unsure. I don't know what the outcome will be if it changes, but if it gets through and there's no political upheavals, then parents will have to say, I need to protect my children's and their children's freedom to be educated outside of the school system without state supervision, without the state tracking them at their every move. You know, I thought Simon Squibb had a good point on the thing. He doesn't want his childhood experiences to follow him through life. Why should any of us? Why should we want that on our children? And basically, we're going to have to say the only way I can defend my own and my children's and their children's freedom is to defend everybody's. And that is more of a battle now than it was in Joy's day. So I think we've got to see that the arguments have moved on, and we have got to take it from that point. You muted, Juliet. You got Michelle's disease.
No, I think it's my. Hold on.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, it's my headset. It wasn't. It come undone a bit. I think, this is the thing, is that in the 50s and 60s, obviously there was still some recognition of parents being in charge. Plus, it was post-war Britain. They didn't need more burdens on them at that point, I don't think. We are in a different era now. There are other agendas. There are global agendas at play here, where one is affecting what one country does affects another country. We have MPs who are looking to Germany as an example of how school should be done and compulsory schooling should be done, which is very scary, because we don't particularly want to be using that as our model. I feel the model in the UK has worked fairly well up till now, as long as everyone's doing their jobs.
Well, the model in the UK is very different. The state is not able to supervise parents.
Yeah.
The British government, the Department for Education, had it in the 2022 schools bill. They've got it in the background papers for this, quoting the case from Conrad v. Germany, that the state should supervise what's happening and to prevent parallel societies. And those of you who've managed to read anything of the UNESCO report that came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago, too much happening to get my head into it up to now, but what I've spotted, they're also quoting the same case. It is the same case. The state needs to supervise parenthood. Yeah.
And, we know that that's not worked out particularly well in the past anyway, in examples where it's happened. So, Michelle, we are sort of heading into the last half an hour of our live. If anyone feels that we need to continue, we can. I'm fine to continue as well. But we've had some questions about what can we do. What are the actions that we can take? And I know Randall's also got some thoughts on this, but, we have the Home Education Action Group, which is called the Action Group, because we try and put actions on there that we can do against any political moves against home education. And then Michelle also has the Stop the Children's Wellbeing in Schools page, which you can join. And there's a lot of actions that are being replicated. So the Michelle's page is being shared also in the action group, and we're supporting Michelle with many of the actions that she is moving or putting forward. So what I want to do is I think let's try and finish this on a more positive note about what can we do. Maybe we can look at so for Joy, she was a force of nature as well. She was very good with the pen and with writing very good arguments. So I think one thing we need to do is, what are our arguments? We need to kind of have an idea what those are. And I know you could tell us where people can find some of those. And it's also that being willing to see this thing through to the end, which Joy Baker did as well. She had to see it through to the end. It took her, I think, about 10 years in all to finish her battle. So those are two things that we can take away from the example of Joy Baker is what are your arguments, and are you willing to see it through to the end? So perhaps I want to let you just talk a little bit about some actions people can get involved in, which will give them something to do, something constructive.
Well, the first thing is we need to take everything one step at a time. The government had fully planned that this bill would have been wrapped up by the summer. They'd already got regulations that they were planning on laying over the summer of now. So we've already pushed it back loads as it is. But it's about keeping that pressure on, because until it reaches royal assent, there's still everything to play for at this point. If it gets royal assent and goes the other side, then there's steps to do as well to play. But at this particular moment in time, we have got the petition debate coming up on the 1st of December. So we need people to be friendly with their local councillors and their MPs. Now, the reason I add local councillors in as well is local councillors talk to lots of people. So if you're not getting the answer you want out of your MPs, Sometimes a bit of pressure of councillors coming together and having conversations may shift your MP as well. But also that helps on the ground, because if the councillors already know your concerns, if the bill gets through and they've got to implement the guidance, you're not going to get the worst variation of it, because councillors already know about you. So they know more of the realities as opposed to just the myth of the home ed. So it helps for now, and it helps for the future. And if the MPs then show up for the debate and speak, that will give us lots of clips that we can use. And if they say the right things, we can use them to lobby. We can lobby the peers, who report stage, luckily, is after the debate. If it gets listed, it's not been listed yet. So if we get some really good sound bites out of MPs, we can use that to encourage other MPs to stand alongside them, but also to lobby the peers to do the right thing with the right amendments, but also to add extra pressure onto the government, because obviously, particularly if a lot of Labour MPs turn up at the debate and are speaking against what's in the bill, the government will have to consider their position. The reason I say that is if the report stage goes through and amendments get passed, when it goes back to ping pong, they need to know that their party is going to follow the whip. And if several of their party members have already spoken out, indicating they're happy to maybe not necessarily toe the party line, it adds extra pressure onto the government, and they have to sort of maybe think about whether they're willing to put forward their own amendments to make it a bit nicer, to make it a bit easier on us. But at every stage, we just need to keep that pressure on. On the debate day, we're also having a small gathering. So if people are in London, you can go and get some badges, some leaflets that you can then hand out to other people in your area, because it's about people knowing this bill exists. Because at the moment, what's been our hardest bit is the average person hasn't heard of it. It's just gone by with no one noticing it exists, even though it has the potential to change so much with regards to the relationship of parents with the state. The other bit is we have a massive demo on the 17th of January. We are even surprised that the date actually has turned out to work fine, because I know when we first pitched the date, we ourselves had sort of thought we wouldn't be able to hold the bill off that long. Now it looks like we'll still have plenty of time. Again, we're trying to make that as big as possible. We will need numbers, and we will need immediate impact, because we need the government to know that they need to listen. And again, this is all about being able to sort of make them think twice, because obviously the best scenario is the bill goes away. But we also have to be realistic. So we take it each step at a time. We're already doing better than we anticipated. Than if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have thought we would already be at royal assent. So we're already doing better, and that's down to everyone who so far has written to their MPs, has rallied, has got their MPs to ask questions. Because recently the questions are being asked that should have been asked months ago, but they're now starting to listen. So that's really good. And it's something any of you can do. Ask your MP this particular question, can you get that asked? But you need to make it so it's meaningful. So things like the impact assessments are really good ones to do. Once we get past the rally stage, then we'll need to regroup, and we'll need to see where we're at. If report stage is over at that point, then we'll need to sort of keep a close eye on how ping pong is. And again, we need everyone being friendly with their MPs, to ensure that if any amendments that we want are there, that they don't get removed. If we get to royal assent and it gets passed, then we all need to look out for those consultations. And we need to look out for any regulations being laid, because if a regulation is laid, we still have another opportunity to lobby MPs and ask them to reject the regulation if it's not appropriate. But obviously we can't reject it till we know what exists. And it depends what it actually says. And again, before guidance is published, that is going to be done in a draft, and we know it's going to be a 12-week consultation on that as well. Again, if we get big numbers writing very clearly that we will not accept X, Y, and Z, that sends a really strong message, and all of those things then help. if we get that far, though, then we may be looking at having to do legal challenges, and we'd have to be looking at how we don't comply or do comply in a way that we can all be comfortable with whilst we wait for legal challenges to go through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't hear you.
Sorry? What did
You
Can't hear you.
Quiet.
Oh,
Okay, come closer to my microphone.
That's better.
Jen, is that better?
yeah.
Okay, so Jen Hodge put a very useful post up this morning about alternative provisions. A lot of home educators use alternative provisions as part of their education. Alternative provisions will be massively affected by this bill in ways that we don't know, because the parameters of how they will be affected have been left to secondary legislation. So I would suggest that anybody out there who has their child taking part in any kind of alternative provision, makes sure that those alternative provisions understand that this bill affects them. The vast majority of them have been putting their heads in the sand and completely ignoring that this may affect them. This will affect them massively. Even if they are registered with the local authority as alternative provisions, there is nothing here that excludes them at all. So we really, really do need to have a really good think about involvement. So as we've said before, we need to have as many people supporting us on the rally in January as possible. If between now and then we can also motivate all the alternative provisions to start joining the party, we will be able to have an even bigger impact. So it's just something to think about.
Yes, I think, the thing about the alternative provisions is an important one, because those alternative provisions would be required to provide information to your local authority about you and about other children as well that they might not know about already. I've been using the analogy just to try and help people understand how bad this is if we use the analogy of the government suddenly becomes concerned about the diet. Maybe some child has died of diabetes or something, and they decide they want to weaponize this to find out what people are feeding their children. And so you have to provide them with a list of your monthly menus. And if you have any change, you have to make sure you update them, because maybe your child doesn't eat hot dogs anymore. They now eat this. You need to notify them. And then you have to send them the information everywhere you buy your groceries. So you send them your details of Tesco and Sainsbury's or whatever. And they then approach Sainsbury's and say, oh, can you tell us what Juliet's been buying this month for a grocery shop? And they send all my groceries, and then they can see if I bought a bottle of wine, or maybe too many bottles of wine, or whatever, or too many sugary treats. But Tesco also has to send them, like anyone else that hasn't maybe handed over those details. And if I don't send the information, then they're going to take me to court potentially, and then I have to have a home visit to check and see what I'm actually serving in my house and all of that. And this is a little bit like what this bill would do, is that you'd have to provide information on what education you're providing your child, who you're using to provide education. So as Alison said, any alternative provisions, any settings. They even haven't yet quite defined what those settings are. So it could be cubs and brownies, which have got nothing to do necessarily with school or home education. They're outside of that. And then they can then ask those providers to send your information as well. And if you don't provide the information, whereas in the past, a school attendance order in the past used to be regarding education, what education the child is providing. A school attendance order under this bill would also be about whether you're giving the information or not. So it could have nothing to do with the child's education, but whether you're providing the information. And then under that school attendance order, the threat of it, they could come do home visits and that kind of thing to consider where the child's being educated. So there's a lot of things that are really quite nasty. One of my others that I really hate is that in the past, sharing data without consent was only to be done if a child was at risk of significant harm or at significant risk of harm. I'm not sure which, but either works. Yeah, significant risk of harm.
Suffering or risk of is the...
Yeah. Now, in this bill, if you look carefully, they talk about sharing data without your consent to promote the well-being of the child, the welfare of the child. That is a very, very low bar. And it means that people could share your child's data without your consent for pretty much anything they could cook up. So that to me is to be really concerned about as well. It's not strong enough. It's not robust enough. And there's also no protection in this bill for parents for if your local authority behaves badly. There's a lot of asking of saying what we have to give, and there's almost zero giving anything that they have to give us. So there's all stick, no carrot. So it is a very, very nasty bill. And we do need to fight it. And please, if you are not part of the Home Education Action Group on Facebook already, or if you are not following the Stop the Children's Wellbeing in Schools bill page, please go and do that, because you will hear of actions you can take. We want to see as many as possible at the protest on the 17th of January. So it's a Saturday. You can plan ahead, put it in your diaries. Don't let anything stop you from getting there. Make a plan and a backup plan. If you're going to take the train and the trains are giving trouble, make a backup plan. Make sure you have your warm outfit planned as well. You know, it's going to be cold. So we need to think about all of these things so that we don't flake out. We cannot afford to flake out. This is that's not what Joy Baker would have done, and it's not what we're going to do. So we all need to get a little bit more serious about this and just understand what we might lose if this bill passes.
One way of keeping up with what's going on a regular basis in a really easy, bite-sized way is to sign up for the Substack. Absolutely, yes. Sign up for the Substack, and we'll put it underneath here.
Yeah, Amy, can you go and find the link for the Substack and pop it in? So on the so there's the Home Education Alliance page as well. So if you don't want to join a private group, you can just follow the Home Education Alliance page. Actually, the Stop the Children's Wellbeing Schools page will also do this, but we have a Sunday night live as well, where we talk about what the most recent updates are. And then those same updates will be in the Substack, along with links for other things as well that you might be wanting to act on. So subscribing to the Substack means that you get it in your inbox on a Monday morning, all the information you need. So please go. Those are some simple things you can do to make sure you stay updated on everything.
Can I just say that I've been sat in the comments because I've been too sick to be on the camera, and it's so lovely to see people are actually asking questions. They're getting involved. There was one that kind of came up while Randall was speaking, and I think the intention was for us to kind of get Michelle to answer that, but I think it's really important to highlight. Kind of brought up a lot of feelings for me. I'm a second generation home educated person. I was home educated myself, and I'm home educating my son, and he's never been to school or nursery, and he's very vocal about his rights to be home educated. He doesn't feel that he should be pressured into being sent to school or conform to any school norms. We've definitely seen the product around us and decided that that's not our crowd. You know, we definitely are very independent and different to those that are around us, and it's given him the space to develop at his pace. But I wanted to kind of say this comment really kind of brought up emotions. The comment was, how do we prove to the government that home education works? And actually what this needs is, it needs flipping on its head. It's not for us to prove that it works. It's for the government to prove that they need to be involved, because there is nothing in the evidence that we have ever gathered or anything that we have fed back that has shown there is a need, there is a concern. This is all fictitious fear-mongering by the government that has come up from misinformation, not understanding something, and refusing to come alongside and learn with us what this is. We have such a huge success rate of retaining parents that come out of schools that it is showing in the data that this works. This caters for children who need that extra time, that extra space, a different learning style. And the way the government have been tackling this all this time has been to narrow that curriculum so that it reduces the amount of extra curricular activities that they provide. And actually, children with extracurricular activities are being shown to improve better than their peers. So we need a very full curriculum. We need the government to be looking at the education system rather than us being asked to prove that home education works.
Yeah,
because
I think
it really is the other way around.
Yeah, I agree with you, Amy, is that there's no indication that our lives are improved by the involvement of the local authority, to be honest.
I can absolutely vouch for that, because I've had the local authority involved, and it's so negative.
It must be just a handful of families really whose lives have been improved by it, to be honest. But
I might be able to count it on one hand.
Yeah, this is the challenge. This is the challenge we're dealing with, and I think it is for us to go and think really carefully about how we approach our local MPs and our councillors, and to change their mindsets. In terms of proving anything to the government about home education, I can just tell you, I don't think they're interested. They know already that it works, and it doesn't suit their narrative, so they're not going to. They just pretend it doesn't exist, that it's not true. It's a bit of finger in the ears and la 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 la.